The prophetic timeline revealed. The central question. The film opens on a close-up of an ancient, ornate scroll of scripture illuminated by a single shaft of light in a dark study. The text is Hebrew, but as the camera focuses, key phrases like Israel, Zion, latter days glow with a subtle, ethereal light. A wise, grandfatherly voice begins, warm but filled with awe. A divine countdown. The camera pulls back to reveal the scroll is part of a larger, complex schematic that floats in the air above the desk, a glowing, interconnected tree of timelines and events, with Israel as the central, pulsing trunk. Modern news headlines about Jerusalem, conflicts, materialize as ephemeral holograms around it, connecting to ancient prophetic nodes. The thesis, Israel as fulfillment. We zoom in to a section of the timeline where a node labeled 1948 shines brightly. The imagery shifts to a stylized, hopeful scene. People of all ages and dress from across history disembarking from ships and planes onto the shore of a vibrant, sun-drenched land. The land itself seems to welcome them, flowers blooming where they step. Jesus points to Jerusalem. The scene transitions to a beautiful, serene memory. A young Jesus, depicted with kindness and authority, stands with his disciples on a hillside overlooking the gleaming Second Temple in Jerusalem. He gestures toward it, his expression solemn. As his finger points, a faint, ominous crackle of light, like future lightning, flashes momentarily through the temple stones. The call to a prophetic lens. We snap back to the present. The scholar looks from his ancient scroll to a modern tablet displaying live news footage of Jerusalem. As he looks, a visual filter overlays the news footage. Faint, glowing prophetic script from Ezekiel and Zechariah transposes itself over the modern cityscape, showing how the ancient words map onto the modern geography.
The first sign, temple destroyed. Jesus' ominous prophecy. We return to the hillside with Jesus and the disciples. This time, the camera focuses tightly on the magnificent temple. Jesus' words echo. As he says, "Not one stone," we see a slow-motion, stylized visual of a single, intricately carved cornerstone gently trembling and then beginning to levitate, breaking its bond with the stone beneath it. The fulfillment, Roman siege. A hard cut to 70 AD. The scene is dark, chaotic, and dramatic. Roman siege engines, ballistae, towers loom against a night sky lit by fire. Legionaries swarm. The temple is ablaze. The scene is not gratuitously violent, but focused on the destructive act. Soldiers using pry bars on the stones, their faces straining. The aftermath, a sacred void. The fire dies. Dawn breaks over Jerusalem. All that remains of the temple is a field of scattered, blackened stones on the elevated platform of Mount Moriah. A single weeping Jewish elder in torn robes stands amidst the rubble, touching a broken fragment of the menorah. The platform is empty, silent, and holy. The witness of history. Time-lapse. The scene on the mount remains empty, but the city around it changes. Byzantine churches rise and fall. Islamic minarets and domes are built. Crusader flags fly and vanish. Ottoman walls go up. Through all centuries, the Temple Mount platform itself remains conspicuously bare of a Jewish temple, a silent witness. The tension, a future temple. From the present-day stones of the Western Wall, the Kotel, a ghostly, glowing projection of a future third temple based on Ezekiel's visions superimposes itself onto the empty mount above.
It's beautiful, majestic, and pure white. The image shimmers between the ancient rubble and the future building, highlighting the prophetic tension.
Signs 2 and 3. Nation reborn, city reunited. The scattering, diaspora. Signs 2 and 3 form the miraculous modern prologue to the end times narrative, the rebirth of Israel as a sovereign nation and the reunification of Jerusalem under Jewish control. For nearly 2 millennia after the Roman dispersion, the Jewish people existed as a stateless diaspora, persecuted and scattered across the globe, a condition foretold in verses like Deuteronomy 28:64. The promise of regathering. Yet intertwined with these warnings were promises of an eventual regathering, such as Ezekiel 36:24. For I will take you out of the nations, I will gather you from all the countries, and bring you back into your own land. The seeming impossibility of this, a people without a land, returning to a land without a people, reviving a dead language and re-establishing sovereignty, was precisely fulfilled on May 14, 1948. The miracle of 1948. This was an unprecedented event in human history, a nation restored after such a long interval. As the LA Times clipping noted, it was the Zionist dream come true. But from a prophetic perspective, it was far more. It was the necessary precondition for countless other prophecies. A people scattered had to be regathered in their land for the subsequent drama to unfold. The divided city, pre-1967. This leads directly to Sign 3, the capture and unification of Jerusalem in the Six-Day War of 1967. Prior to this, Jerusalem was a divided city, with Jordan controlling the ancient eastern sections, including the Temple Mount and the Western Wall. Prophecies concerning the end times, however, consistently presuppose a Jewish presence and control in Jerusalem, Zechariah 12-14, Luke 21:24. Reunification, 1967. The 1967 war resulted in Israel gaining sovereignty over the entire city, a watershed moment that made the subsequent signs, those dealing with temple preparation, conflict, and divine intervention, geopolitically possible. Without a Jewish state, and without that state controlling its ancient capital, the later prophecies remain abstract spiritual metaphors. With their fulfillment, they become imminent potentialities. These two signs transformed Israel from a theological concept into a dynamic, living entity on the world stage, setting the literal geographical and national stage for the events that follow. Preparing the Third Temple. Crafting the sacred vessels. Sign 4 represents the active, tangible preparation for the next major prophetic milestone, the rebuilding of the Third Temple. This is not merely a theoretical desire, but a vigorous, ongoing movement within segments of Israeli society. As highlighted, the creation of sacred artifacts like the golden menorah, crafted to precise biblical specifications, Exodus 25:31-40, the breeding of ritually pure red heifers, Numbers 19, and the training of Levitical priests are concrete steps toward resuming temple worship. The Red Heifer Program. Organizations like the Temple Institute in Jerusalem are dedicated to this goal, researching every aspect of ancient service. This sign is crucial because, according to passages like 2 Thessalonians 2:3-4 and Revelation 11, the Antichrist will defile a standing temple, and the two witnesses will prophesy from Jerusalem. Therefore, a temple must exist for these prophecies to be fulfilled. The immense political and religious obstacle, however, is the current reality of the Temple Mount, known to Muslims as the Haram al-Sharif, home to the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock. Israeli authorities, for reasons of security and to avoid a catastrophic religious war, have maintained a status quo since 1967 that grants administrative control to a Muslim trust, the Waqf. This creates a tense paradox. The preparations advance, but the actual construction is blocked by a fragile geopolitical equilibrium. Sign 4, therefore, is in a state of suspended animation, waiting for a catalytic event that could alter the status quo on the Mount. This connects directly to the contemporary conflicts mentioned, such as the war with Iran and Hamas, which could serve as triggers for a regional reordering that might in turn change the calculus regarding the Temple Mount. The loaded prophetic gun. The presence of the prepared artifacts and the active breeding programs are like a loaded prophetic gun, with the geopolitical situation being the safety catch. This sign demonstrates that the prophetic timeline is not static. It involves active human agency working, often unknowingly, toward divinely foreordained ends.
Signs 5 through 8. The Gog and Magog War. The coalition forms. Signs 5 through 8 introduce the first major eschatological war, the prophesied invasion of Israel by a northern coalition, as detailed in Ezekiel 38 to 39. This conflict, often called the War of Gog and Magog, involves a specific alliance, Magog, identified by many scholars as Russia, Persia, Iran, Put, Libya, Cush, Sudan, Gomer, often associated with Turkey, and Beth Togarmah, parts of modern Turkey, Armenia. The narrative's relevance is startling as it describes a coalition of nations with contemporary animosity toward Israel, led by a Russia seeking spoil, Ezekiel 38, 12 through 13. Israel's false peace, sign 5. Sign 5 is the prerequisite condition. Israel is described as dwelling in unwalled villages, living in a perceived state of security and peace, Ezekiel 38:11. This suggests a period of relative calm for Israel, perhaps following a decisive victory over its immediate neighbors like Hamas or Hezbollah, or even a temporary peace deal that leads to a lowered guard. Then, signs 6 through 8 depict the invasion itself, God's supernatural intervention, and the aftermath. The attack will be overwhelming, like a cloud covering the land, but God will directly intervene with catastrophic natural disasters, a great earthquake, infighting among the troops, torrential rain, hail, fire, and brimstone, Ezekiel 38:19 through 22. The purpose is not merely Israel's defense, but the revelation of God's holiness in the sight of many nations, Ezekiel 38:23. God's supernatural intervention, signs 7 to 8. The aftermath includes a 7-year period of burning the enemy's weapons, Ezekiel 39:9, and the burial of the dead, cleansing the land. This event serves as a catalyst, driving a global recognition of God's power and setting the stage for the next phase. Importantly, the prophecy notes that other nations, potentially former allies like the United States, the merchants of Tarshish and all its villages, Ezekiel 38:13, will offer only verbal protest but not military aid, indicating a future shift in international alliances away from supporting Israel. Aftermath and purpose. This entire sequence, from false peace to catastrophic war to divine salvation, serves to purify and prepare Israel spiritually for the final 7-year period, the tribulation.
If this video motivated you, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss future content. Comment below and let me know where you're watching from and what goal you're working toward. Share this video with someone who needs motivation today. Let's grow and win together.